Black women have always been on the front lines for social justice.
It's what we do.
We organize, make phone calls,
and yes,
we run for office.
All while being fly.
We stand up
To
systemic racism,
fight for health care and justice for
all our citizens and use our power,
our right.
our responsibility.
Black women,
Let's vote.
Vote
for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Your turn, fellas.
Okay, we got this.
Fellas,
Brothers, we've heard our sisters,
Our mothers, our wives, and daughters cry out for equality.
equality,
all across this country. And now it's our turn.
our responsibility.
To take our power back.
Black women vote more than black men.
And it's time we change that.
Don't give your power away.
Every single vote counts in this election.
Show up
Show out.
And vote
For Joe Biden
and Kamala Harris.
Welcome to this Biden-Harris campaign event, Black Men for Biden, Shop Talk Mayor's Edition. Please welcome Trey Baker.
Good evening and welcome to Shop Talk. I'm Trey Baker, the National Director of African American Engagement for the Joe Biden for President campaign. And we're here again in our virtual barbershop to have a real conversation about the issues affecting Black men. We all know that if this were a regular campaign and we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, then right now we would be in barbershops and beauty shops and restaurants all across the country having real conversations with folks and really engaging on the issues that are important in the Black community. Because we have to be in this virtual space, though, we're still having those conversations and still speaking directly to this community where we are. And so tonight we're going to have a special conversation. I'm going to get into a conversation with some of my friends who are young Black mayors from around this country who are doing spectacular work. So we're going to just hop right into the conversation, and we're going to welcome the mayors as it is into the barbershop right now. And so, fellas, where I'd like to get started in this conversation is essentially this. We are in the middle of three pandemics, really. We have COVID-19, which is ravaging our community with rates that are highest in getting COVID-19 and dying from COVID-19 in Black and brown communities. We're suffering from the pandemic of a downturn in the economy, which is affecting our communities more so than ever because we're the essential workers. We're the folks who are getting laid off from our jobs. And also, we're right in the middle, and we keep on seeing this pandemic of racial strife and systemic racism that's going on in this country. So I think where I would like to start is from your perspective, as mayors in your respective cities across this country. I'd like to hear first what you're hearing in your communities as it relates to the Black community, specifically Black men, and then also what you're doing and some of the solutions that you have in that respect. So I think what I'll do is I'll start first with Mayor Carter.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks for having us on. It's good to be on here with so many of my favorite mayors from around the country. We're hearing from people who understand that we, live in a time that is unprecedented, that we're having, these unprecedented challenges that are the culmination of where we've been headed for so long. And that to move our country forward, to move our communities forward, we need a fundamentally new direction. We need fundamentally new ways for people in our community to participate in our politics and participate in our economy. I think people know that we have been ignored out of Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. that won't even take steps to control the coronavirus pandemic in the White House. Clearly is not taking action to control the disparate impacts it's having on our African American, our Black and brown communities. And so I'm hearing people who are in pain, who are in challenge. I'm also hearing from people who are in brand new ways connecting with one another to care for each other in this moment, and know that we have 24 days right now. We have just a couple of weeks to make sure that our voice is heard and that we establish a brand new direction for our whole country.
Others, feel free to jump in.
I can jump in next real quick because this is near and dear to my heart. It's really impacted Shreveport, and I was as a matter of fact, I was the first leader here in Louisiana to call out the disproportionate impact on the African American community. I got with my chief technology officer, and we were able to use some mapping to see where the clusters of our COVID cases were in the community, and we realized they were heavily in African American neighborhoods. The Washington Post actually covered this story. So we saw early on that, hey, Black communities were taking the brunt of this virus and its deadly effects. And a result of that was that, over the 360 lives that's been lost here in my community, a majority of which have been African Americans. So it's really done a lot of damage on us. But I'll say, as far as this virus, we know that it's taking lives away, but it's also taking livelihoods away. And that's another area that's disproportionately impacted African Americans. So when talking about our messaging to men right now, to Black men right now, I still live, most of us are in southern cities, and, Black men here being Christian, we consider ourselves the head of the household. And right now there are too many families throughout Shreveport, throughout Louisiana, that are trying to keep their households together. The relief that they need when they look to Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. has very much turned a cold shoulder to them and neglected them in a time of crisis. So Black men is trying to hold their households together and really, get those unemployment benefits because they lost their job after 15, 20 years through no fault of their own because the COVID, came through in this community. They need leadership, reliable leadership in Washington, D.C., so that in times of crisis and in any other time, there's people that actually understand their plight and is going to go to bat for them. And this administration and leadership out of Washington, D.C. has clearly shown that they won't be there for them. So, I think that's the message, a very clear message when it comes to COVID-19 to Black males throughout the country, honestly.
I would say that we recognize that across the nation, people are hurting. But we would be less than transparent if we didn't say that our communities are hurting in a very unique way. Many of us serve large, diverse communities, Black and brown communities, or have significant populations that are being disproportionately affected. And I think that it's important to recognize that COVID-19 didn't come here to discriminate against Black and brown people. What it has done is shine a light on what has already been taking place. And in some regard, it's sad to say that absent COVID, absent the social unrest that has been taking place, it feels for so long that we haven't been seen, right? That our communities haven't been seen, that what people are dealing with haven't been recognized. And so I think that it's also a moment while we're dealing with the frustration, there's frustration with how people are solving their conflicts at this time because they're suffering from economic strife. They're suffering from health issues and food insecurity and housing insecurity. And all of these things have been amplified in this moment. But I think that this is an opportunity where, while we have so many great organizers over history, I think oppression is the greatest organizer of all time. And so we should take this moment as a rallying cry to make sure that we come out in November, that we make our voice clear and that we vote for a change. But beyond that, that we stay engaged even past the voting day, past running to the polls. We have to be engaged in our communities each and every day, and it takes all of our community to be engaged in that way.
I'll jump in real quick, and I couldn't agree more with all of my brothers thus far. The triple threat we're facing, the fire, the sinkhole, and the tornado of these three pandemics are overlaid upon the challenges that Black America faced already prior to earlier this year. It's so important for us to I think, listen very closely to so many voices that have been elevated over these last several months, voices that felt, for whatever reason, they were not able to break through to make sure that those of us who hold elected office are listening to their challenges, their hopes, their dreams, their demands. And I really think that we play a very unique role in that construct as Black men. There's some currency we have there, and we've got to make sure that over the next several weeks we elevate that, but that we're really translating to people that when Joe Biden's elected president, when Kamala Harris is elected vice president, that there will be a clear gateway to help them continue to share their opinions, concerns, and address those major issues. I think there's a key role here, and obviously excited about all that we can do. As it relates to Trump, this is a game of inches. They're not trying to win all the black vote, and they're trying to win all the black men vote. They just want to carve out a little piece right there. And I think we just kind of be prepared to articulate the fact that we're willing to beat them back every step of the way by being those out front emissaries in the vanguard, tip of the spear. So I'm gonna step off, brothers and sisters. If I don't, I'm gonna wind up getting divorced and come live on Frank Scott's couch or something like that. I don't want to do that. Right.
We don't want that.
We don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want that.
Y'all know how I feel about y'all. I love y'all. And I'm so proud of y'all. Keep pressing.
Yeah,
we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this together. All right. God bless y'all.
God bless you. Thank you. Listen, I'm gonna jump in. I'll jump in before the fellas continue the conversation because I have to get off too. I just wanted to chime in to say this is real work, and over the next 24 days, as I consider where this race is, the time and commitment as mayors we have to do is just continue to encourage our residents to vote. We have to continue to encourage our constituents to vote. And I talked to a resident yesterday who was wanting to do absentee voting. She was in line with her daughter. Her daughter's 8 months pregnant. They stood in line for over 2 hours, and they gave up because it was just taking too long. And I had to end up picking up the phone and calling the county clerk's office to talk about how can their process be better. Is there anything the city can do to assist y'all, additional space, whatever. The point is this: if it's this way now, we have to consider November 3rd long lines. We have to consider people not being patient. We have to consider voter suppression. We have to consider intimidation. We have to consider all of these things. Everything in our power as mayors, we have to continue to encourage our people to vote no matter what. Stay in line no matter how long. Hell, we'll bring you lawn chairs if we have to, food if we have to, put a DJ out there if we have to. Stay in line and vote. But this is critical. I'll be around barbershops and beauty shops for the next 24 days, walking into them, encouraging folk, talking to the owners, talking to the customers. I love y'all fellas, man. Thank y'all for the work y'all do. Wish I could stay on, but y'all keep rocking it out for me.
Can I add, because I can't stay long as well, but I just want to, 2020 has illuminated the inequities we've seen in our society for a very long time. It's shined a bright light on a lot of these inequities. And for me, I believe that the next 4 years, because I think the next decade are probably the most critical years in our country's history since Reconstruction. And so the real test for us as a country will be, where are we going to be when 2030 hits? Are we going to have the same disparities, the same gaps between Black and white Americans when it comes to public education, when it comes to housing, when it comes to generational wealth, when it comes to healthcare? That's the real test for us over the course of the next 10 years, which makes the next 4 years even more critical, right? Because we need a leader who's going to put us on a path that ensure that we lift up Black and brown people, particularly Black men. And so if Black men are looking to make their choices this November, they have to realize that this is the most critical choice you will make in your life at the ballot box. I truly believe that, because it's been us who have been injured and endangered over the last, not only the 400 years, but also the last 6 to 7 months when it comes to the coronavirus, the pandemic, and also the highlighting of police brutality and whatnot over the course of the few years we've seen. That's been on CNN, it's been on Fox News, it's been on MSNBC. So you have to vote as if your life depends on it this year. That's just the bottom line. And I don't want to be too provocative or anything of the sort, but that's what's on the ballot this year. That's exactly what's on the ballot. And I believe that we have a lot to lose if we vote the wrong way in 2020.
I kind of definitely agree with my fellow brothers who are here today. And I think one of the things that has constantly been on my mind in the wake of a lot of the social and civil unrest that each of us have been blessed to lead in this moment. And many of us being millennials, some Generation X, you know, we've read about the civil rights movement. We've heard about it. Clearly, we're students of history, but we're now living in our own generation's Emmett Till moment, Emmett Till era. And so we got to continue to lead. I think one of the things that we are figuring out because of the pandemic, not that we're figuring out, we already knew it, but it's more apparent and more acute from a healthcare disparities to financial disparities and looking at who received and who did not receive PPP loans. And so what we have to do in this current moment is focus on justice, focus on equity, and focus on the eradication of racism in all that we do. And as we enter into these last 24 days, most importantly as mayors, we have to focus on the security of our electoral process. We have to ensure that everyone has access and safety when they're going to the polls. I think that's one of the things that we have to do in addition to having the engagement to ensure that as many people as possible are utilizing their God-given right and exercising their voters' rights over these next 24 days.
You know, I think I'll conclude this with a few points, and I think a lot has already been said of value, and so I'm not sure if I have anything, you know, more to add, except for this, and I'll just get, you know, put it where the ghosts can get it. Is you have to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Let me be abundantly clear. There has been a deliberate rollback on freedoms in this country, and there's been a deliberate and intentional obstacles placed in the path of communities of color, in particular Black communities, and I think specifically where Black men are concerned. When it comes to Governor of Florida supporting the overturning of the ability of felons to vote, even after that's been passed, that's something that impacts all communities. But it certainly disproportionately impacts many men who are coming back into their communities seeking to reestablish themselves now that they're back out of the unjust criminal system that we have. And so when we think about the type of judges, when we think about the type of policies that have been supported, that starts at the top. And so, you know, from the way I view it, we have a lot at stake in this election, and the cities that we represent, the residents that we represent have a lot at stake, whether it's our policies that we would like to implement to level the playing field and to close the chasms that exist in income inequality and access to healthcare and public education, or whether it is how do we invest in disadvantaged neighborhoods and underserved communities through opportunity zones, through you know, HUD grants, working with the Department of Commerce. These things impact all of us in our communities. And when I think about engaging Black men in this race, I think about what do we want to do? We want to be able to provide just like everyone else provides. We want to be able to grow our businesses just like anyone else is able to grow their business. So we have to have laws, and we have to have policies in place that are not shy and not avoiding the distances that exist between access to capital for those Black business owners and those who are not Black. Notice I didn't say minority. There's a difference. So we have to make sure that we have people in place at the federal level that can help us there, because we don't know what we may get at the state level. And as mayors, there's so much we can do to try to push this through on our own. So it takes all of us, I think, understanding what's at stake in this election and making sure we don't get caught in distractions, making sure we don't get caught in terms of what he said and she said. We have to look at the record. And the Republican nominee, in this case, has a record of 4 years to run on. It has been disastrous for America. It's been cataclysmic for Black America. And I think those are things that we need to make sure as Black men, we step up and we acknowledge and we lead this effort to go vote. I'm proud of Black women for being the reliable voting bloc that they are. But I believe that Black men must also assume the responsibility and be accountable in this election to come out and vote. Doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean it changes overnight, but it means that we have some skin in the game and we're part of the process to make this better for everybody.
I just wanted to add one more point, both listening to my brother, Mayor Reed, and what Brother Benjamin said not long before he left, where he talked about that this election is a game of inches. And what the Trump campaign is seeking to do is just carve out a certain segment of the Black community in order to survive. And I don't want anyone who's listening to this to get that we're making the issues of our communities monolithic. The Black community is not monolithic. It has much diversity in it, and people come from various backgrounds like any other community. But I think what you hear my brothers saying is that no matter your perspective, no matter the unique vantage point in which you come to this discussion, there is no interest that you might have that Donald Trump is best for your interest. When I look at even the touting of the economy before the pandemic, first and foremost, there's a lot of misrepresentations within that because where the economy was going already. But also, we have to deal with this equity question. And when you look at a pie, it may be true that as the economy has been improving, that the pie may be getting larger. But the question you really have to ask is your slice of the pie getting any bigger? And that is what we have seen over the last 4 years, is that far too often our community's slice of that pie has not been getting any bigger. And people have been working, they have been the working poor. They may have a job, but they aren't working they don't have living wages. And so as my brother Adrian has said in the past, they aren't just, people aren't just fighting for access to capital. People are literally fighting for access to live in this moment. And so we got to be aware of that and really be in tune with the record.
If I can jump in and piggyback on some of the thoughts, because we've transitioned to quite a bit, but I'll say this. I think if anything we've realized in these times of crisis that we're going through right now, especially for African Americans in this country, is that the entire political system has to work for them. Me and my brothers on this call, we have done everything that we possibly can at the local level to shore up our communities, to make sure that we were putting out the messaging, the public health messaging, so people stay safe from this virus, from giving out, whether you're talking about micro grants or assisting our local businesses to try to keep Main Street strong, because we know Main Street does not correlate to the numbers that we see out of the stock market and Wall Street. We've done everything that we can, but the state leadership is extremely important and federal leadership is extremely important. And that's just not talking about the response to COVID-19, but there's implications with our ability to vote. We talked, it was already referenced that the governor of Florida has taken away the right from, formerly incarcerated people to be able to vote even after that law passed. We know at the federal level right now, people are waiting on unemployment benefits and have been waiting on our Senate to actually pass a bill since May when the House passed the HEROES Act. That lack of perspective, it's what's hurting us the most. And it's the leadership at the other levels, not at the local level, because we see it every day. It's leadership at other levels, particularly the federal level, since we're having a conversation about who should be, the next president of the United States and why people should get out to vote. It's the leadership at that federal level that there's a huge gap right now, and they don't understand that families are hurting, that they have lost these jobs, that they're trying to figure out how they're going to put food on the table tomorrow. In the state of Louisiana, 20% of our households were already cutting back on food in April. That number has only exacerbated since then. People are trying to figure out how they're going to pay their rent, pay their mortgage when we're in a public health crisis, and many governments are telling them to stay inside their home. And we know that the housing moratorium is over. And it's just that lack of perspective. And I think worst case scenario will be the apathy out of Washington, D.C. and the leadership out of Washington, D.C. right now that's really hurting us. So at the end of the day, we got to get out the vote to make sure that we are putting people in those leadership positions that believe in a functional government from top to bottom, and also have a perspective on our lived experiences every single day in the Black community.
And can I add just real quick before we move on, is that someone stated earlier that we are not all a monolith, right? I mean, remember, there was a primary election before there was a general election that'll be coming up on November 3rd. And all the Black men on this call who are also mayors as well, we all don't think the same, right? We have own independent thoughts that because we represent independent cities as well. And we all didn't support the same person initially, too. But what we all agree on is this, that Donald Trump is not good for our communities, period. Hard stop. Hard stop. And so if we want to our communities to progress, our cities to progress, we're going to need someone who's been willing to actually to step into the gap. And I think what you've seen from all of us is that we believe that individuals is Joe Biden, those individuals, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And that's what it boils down to. And this is a choice between Donald Trump and Mike Pence and and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I'm choosing Biden and Harris all day, 24/7, and twice on Sunday, no matter what.
Thanks so much, Mayor. We really appreciate that. Now I just kind of want to cut through a little bit and talk about how you're addressing some of the things in your communities. There's a frustration in our community right now, particularly as it relates to Black men. There's a frustration with our criminal justice system. There's a frustration with our economic system, that these systems weren't built for us, that they were outright built against us and not in our favor. And there's a feeling that people are just almost disgusted with where we are right now. And so as you go into these barbershops, as you go around your communities, and you find a young brother who's just trying to make ends meet and trying to make it work, and you want to have a real talk kind of conversation, like we're in the barbershop right now. And so what are you saying to people to, one, let them know the importance of voting and the importance of this moment? And how are you cutting through in dispelling those myths, those things that are going on, those folks who are out here telling people to hold their votes? How are you addressing that in your community, and how are you getting that message across?
So if I can jump in there, and let me say this to begin, and I don't know if we can underscore this enough. People are really, really, really hurting right now, and you know, my brothers on this call, we've talked on various occasions, and I know that they're suffering from many of the same things that I'm suffering from here in Jackson, and my people are suffering from here in Jackson. And so we have to recognize that pain as being real, right? And people aren't battling or fighting for the ideas in our head. They're fighting for the material benefit to live better lives. And so we have to recognize that. And so what I would say to that person, you know, actually Professor Ruha Benjamin, who I think profoundly said, listen, we must not only dismantle the world we don't want to live in, we have to be the most active participants in building the one we do want to live in. And so we're not asking that you put your faith in you know, two people that we feel best represent your interest and walk away from the table. We're asking that you continue to lean in. We're asking that you continue to put pressure on the system so that they reach their best form. And so what we are suggesting to you is that they represent a team that is more committed and more sincere about working with you and working with our communities than Donald Trump and Mike Pence would ever be. And so I think that's the real conversation is where is there room to grow? Where is there opportunity to build and expand and really get to these issues that have historically faced our communities? The issue of the issues that we stare down with in terms of social justice and issues of equity and you know, the detrimental impact that we experience as a community is not new. But at the same time, we have to know where there is a willing partner in order to push back on this system. And we have to be dogmatic about it ourselves.
Here's the deal. When we're going into our barbershops and different areas of our neighborhoods, we have to show and tell what Biden-Harris is going to do for all of us being Black and brown communities. And at the end of the day, many of us are all living paycheck to paycheck. And we have to demonstrate what are we going to do to ensure that Black and brown businesses are different, how we're going to increase capital, how we're going to focus on the Build Back Better plan, but really more than just calling it a plan, but really demonstrating how we're going to increase the number of Black and brown businesses that are going to have greater access to capital, how we're going to have more Black and brown businesses that traditionally have not had a seat at the table when it comes to different types of contract. What are we going to be doing for all of our working brothers and sisters that we need to have the infrastructure plan so we can put money on the street to build our streets? And what are we going to be doing to ensuring that we are focusing on equity in all that we do? That's at the end of the day, how we're going to live and move from one day to the next. And that's what we have to be focusing on. That's what Vice President Biden and Senator Harris are already working on and have a history of that. But again, it goes down to intentionality and also to demonstrate when there is going to be leaders in place that's going to have that same intentionality that we are preaching and teaching about from the campaign trail, then when we get an opportunity to govern, that it really shows up and we do not forget from whence we come from.
You know, I'll say when I am talking to brothers in the barbershop, I always, it reminds me of talking to my father. And my father passed away when he was 49. He was a former offender, returning citizen, made a mistake early in his life. And all he wanted for his life, the 49 years he got to live, was to ensure that me and my brother and my sister got a better life. And that meant for him, the ability for him to get a good job, to put food on the table, and keep a roof over our heads. And also that the people in charge, we're not gonna like hold him down. And what I hear from my friends at the barbershops these days is that the rhetoric they hear out of Donald Trump isn't for them. How are they gonna how are they gonna put food on the table and keep a roof over their families' heads? That's what they're caring about right now. And right now, I think that when I know Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I trust them. You have to ask the question whether or not you trust them with your father's life, your brother's life, your cousin's life. And I don't trust Donald Trump and Mike Pence with my dad's life. I don't trust them with my brother's life. And that's how I normally break it down for my friends in the barbershop. Who do you trust with your life? Whether it's the pandemic, whether it's racial strife, policing, public safety, who do you trust with your life right now? Who do you trust? And it doesn't end up being Donald Trump, I guarantee you that. That's what it comes down to me.
Yeah, and I'll jump in right now. I don't know about you fellas, but any beauty shop or barber shop that I've been to over the last couple months, honestly, the last couple years, I'm yet to meet a Donald Trump fan amongst us. I know we talk about us not being a monolith, but I'm yet to hear somebody in the beauty shop or barber shop talking about their support for the president, the current president, and that's one thing. The sentiment is one thing. I think a part of this challenge, I'll go so far to say the bigger challenge, is to turn that sentiment into energy and actually have them get out to vote so that they understand, hey, just being upset with the presidential administration is not good enough. You got to take it a step further and we got to get you out to vote. And one way that we can do that is when we go into the beauty shops and barbershops, we have a sense of credibility already because these are our citizens and they've seen the way that we've led. And my citizens will look at me and say, and I've talked about this all the time, because usually I'm in there just telling them, what we've done. But, we had the most receipts that we gave to Black businesses in Shreveport history in my first year. The highest ever was 13%. We got up to 20%. That's the public, the local government working for you. So when people talking about putting food on the table and economic opportunities, I led by example at City Hall. And again, and talking about how this whole system has to work, I let them know. Now imagine if your state leadership and your federal leadership had this exact same attitude. You know, they could relate to you. They knew what you were going through. They knew the opportunities that you needed. Imagine the buckets of resources that would open up for our community, that would open up for you. And that really gets at the, hey, why should I get out to vote? That really gives them the energy to say, hey, I do need to go and vote for this Biden-Harris ticket, because they do have a plan. They do believe in a functional government. They do have a plan to make sure that an infrastructure bill is passed, and that on the opposite side of COVID-19, we can make sure that we are putting people back to work. They do want to address minimum wage right now, because the federal minimum wage won't even allow you to afford an apartment in Louisiana, one of the, you know, cheapest places to live in the country. So, you know, I think it's our credibility as we bring that to the table in these beauty shops and barbershops, and really just a strong push to say, look, I've been hearing you talk about the president and this administration for months, if not years now. You know, what you going to do about it in November? You know, what are you going to do about it in November? We need you to get out to the polls. We need you to show, you know, through action that we need a leader in Washington, D.C. that's going to be looking out for our community.
Yeah, that's right, Mayor Perkins. And what really sticks out to me in what you just said is the fact that you've never been to a barber shop or a beauty shop and met a Trump supporter there. And it can't happen, because one thing we know about the barbershop is that rhetoric doesn't fly, BS doesn't fly, lies don't fly. You can't just talk past something in the way that the president likes to do. You got to be able to talk in small, simple terms and say, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing for our country. This is what we're doing for our communities. And the president just saying, you know, these like outlandish things, like he's the greatest president for Black America, except for maybe Abraham Lincoln, is just insane. And it'd be rejected in any barbershop that I've ever been to, right? Then by contrast, you have the Biden-Harris plan. The Biden-Harris plan, which helps African-American community members purchase homes, start or expand their businesses, pay off, you know, student loans and access education, like has so many just very clear, succinct, and resourced, because everybody can just say something, but to put resources in a plan and say, we're going to put the money where our mouth is, we're going to put the policy where our mouth is, you know, that's what we need for this community. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, in response to the question, what do I say to folks? The truth is they're saying it to me. They know that our businesses are dealt an unfair hand. They know that our communities are suffering disproportionately from not only this virus, but the economic pandemic, and also the pandemic of racism that we see just play out over and over and over across our country. They know that things are messed up. And, you know, what we have to do is make sure that they understand that through these policy initiatives, through these funding initiatives, and through, I don't know who said it, but somebody said it, you know, we're not just going to vote, but we're going to sit at the table and pull our chair up to the table and work alongside a Biden-Harris administration for the next 4 to 8 years, and make sure that the policies that we are bringing forward are going to serve our communities in the way that they are. We have a Biden and Harris administration who wants that engagement, who invites that engagement, who initiates that engagement constantly, running against Trump administration who ignores us, who lies to us, who devalues us, who puts millions of dollars to suppress our vote in our community. It's a no-brainer for me. And I think we just have to continue having that conversation with folks.
Mayor Carter, I think one of the things that you said was we can't lose sight of. You said resources, but also I think it's another word that we all enjoy and understand the true meaning in our respective positions, and that's representation matters. That's right. Biden-Harris is going to represent the Black and brown communities of these United States of America, but more importantly, they're going to represent the diversity and all of its value of our nation. And at the end of the day, when you have administrations that have 80 to 100 judicial appointments, and none of them look like you and me. None of them are a Black or brown woman. They're not a Black or brown man. They're not from urban areas, so they don't understand the urban plight. They don't understand the urban upbringing. And at the end of the day, when we go into a barbershop, you want somebody that has a lived experience, that they look like you and me, that are going to represent us when we have and fall on hard times, that we have a judge that's going to be able to look and say, you know, maybe we do present a second chance, rather than an understanding that sometimes it's not necessarily a handout. We need a hand up, but you can't necessarily give a hand up if you've never been down. And at the end of the day, that's what we have to communicate. I mean, we can talk about all the platitudes that we want. We all know that we're smart, but at the end of the day, we got to show where the proof is in the pudding. And at the end of the day, representation matters in addition to the resources. And when we have resources and representation, then we have a truly intentional operation that we're going to be able to move things forward. So folks understand this is what we're getting the return on our investment for when we're going out to the polls.
You know, I think on this topic, y'all have hit so many good points. It's very few left for me to say, but I guess I'm passionate about this discussion in the barbershop. Because Frank, you know, you just talked about the judges that have been appointed, and I'm big on this because often we think about the political process, but it's the courtrooms that have really been major influences and change in this country. And when you think about having over 200 or so judges and none of them being people of color, or very few of them being people of color, none of them being African-American men out of that, that's a problem. I think that shows what the president thinks about the value of Black men. I think he sees Black men as athletes and entertainers. I don't think that he sees the value and worth and hard work that Black men put forward every day in this community, or in your community, or in all of our cities across this country, whether that's in the military, whether that's working in our sanitation department, or even working you know, in our police departments, as educators, wherever it may be. So I don't think there's a value of contribution to what we have brought to this country. And so when we think about the policies, I want to be very, very clear that there's a distinct difference economically, education, healthcare, that is in direct contrast with the needs of most Black folk. Now, I don't care if you live on the south side of Chicago. I don't care if you live in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I don't care if you live in Tallahassee, Florida. Doesn't matter to me if you're Denver, Colorado. Doesn't matter to me where you are. For most people, there are some commonalities there, though we're not a monolith, that brings us together when it's time to vote. Doesn't mean we don't have some spirited debates in the primary, or in the back room, as I like to call it. Doesn't mean that we don't have some various discussions, but when it's time to come out as one, it's time to come out as one. And I think when there are men in the barbershops who don't think that, you know, things have changed, I would say you have to look at this cast that we have right here: Jackson, Mississippi, Shreveport, Louisiana, Little Rock, Arkansas, Montgomery, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, Columbia, South Carolina, St. Paul, Minnesota. When you think about these cities, this isn't happening 10 or 20 years ago. This isn't happening without the Voting Rights Act. This isn't happening without the right to vote, which is still up to challenge by this current administration. So when we think about the bare level things that allow somebody in the barbershop to be a judge, to make a decision on something that impacts you or your son, your nephew, or your father, then often that is relational. It is, do I understand your experience? Do I understand your plight? Allowing for what the law has on the books. Do I understand what the law allows me to do as a judge? Do I understand what I can do as an executive of a city or as a legislator in making policy? These things are very crucial. And so someone may say, well, you know, it hasn't changed anything. And as the late John Lewis would say, you know, come walk in my shoes. And for those that are of a different generation, they can speak to a panel such as this of us being able to quote our favorite rappers no more than we can quote our favorite authors, and talk about this being a different place in the United States. But it's not one that is guaranteed. It's not even one that's old. So it's one that we know we have to fight for every day. And that's not just at election time. That's every day of this democracy, and participating in that and bending it toward the way that it should be. But it doesn't happen without our participation. It doesn't happen without the push and the bend of that force that is and has been the Black community in this country over 400 years. So we have to maintain that through November the 3rd. And then we can go back and say, hey, now that we have voted in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, here's what we want Mayor Lumumba to go talk about. Here's what we want Mayor Perkins to go discuss. This is what we want Mayor Woodfin and some others to go speak on our behalf. And guess what? You got to come back to the barbershop to talk to us and tell us what you did and what happened and what they're going to do. And if that answer is not satisfactory, then you're going to have to bear the brunt of that. And so there's also that connectivity that I think is at stake in terms of pushing forth our priorities and making sure the things that we know we discuss off the record in the barbershop, whether it's LeBron being the GOAT or MJ or Kobe or whoever, we discuss the same things around economic policy and what we have to do to grow our businesses, improve our neighborhoods, and be better men in our respective communities and households.
Wait, Steve, were you just saying that LeBron is the GOAT? Is that what you just said?
He knows better. He knows better.
Let me go ahead and say this. Let me bust. You can never get past 6-0. Okay, you can never get past 6-0.
I was just asking a question. I didn't know if that was an example or a declaration. I was just checking.
Listen, there's only one GOAT, and I think we all know who that GOAT is.
I'm from Detroit, so I'd rather go with LeBron. You know what I'm saying? As a Piston fan, you know, I'd rather go with LeBron. I know that's controversial right there, but we'll go off of that discussion before I lose some votes behind that.
Yeah, but no, Steve. No, I was talking to some college students yesterday, and they were like, "Hey, what can we do?" And I told them the same thing. I said, you know, as much as y'all talk about parties or y'all talk about TikTok or y'all talk whatever is ubiquitous to y'all right now, we need to make sure that politics is just as ubiquitous, where, you know, it is introduced in every single conversation, you know, wherever you are. And, you know, that's the broader message to the community overall. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things that you hit on. You gave me some ideas, but we need to make sure we are promoting history at this time to give people perspective of where we are. And what I mean by promoting history, as African Americans, we've only had full rights as a citizen for about 60 years now. You know what I mean? The thought that over 100, you know, we've been making this progress for hundreds of years and all, it's just not true. We've been able to exercise our full rights as American citizens since the 1960s. So history is very important to let people know the progress that we've made in just a short time. We have hit well above our weight class, but another thing we need to kill is this sense of inevitability that a lot of people have, thinking that it's going to be this continuous march forward in America is just going to improve, because that is not the case. There takes a lot of energy and effort to keep that going. And I think today provides the greatest examples of that. We thought voter suppression was something that Congressman John Lewis was fighting for in the 1960s. You know, when there were grandfather clauses that existed in a lot of our communities, when there were literacy tests at polls in a lot of our communities, when there were poll taxes. But what we're seeing today, the undermining of the U.S. Postal Service, one drop box for entire cities of millions of people in some areas to do early voting. You know, the rhetoric out there telling people to vote 2 times and all this crazy stuff, and just, you know, the doubt that they're casting over our democracy to try to suppress our votes in various different ways. Should remind people that this is an onward march that takes energy and effort every single day. And to honor our forefathers like Congressman John Lewis and Martin Luther King, that we celebrate every year and we celebrate all the time, it's in actions like going to the polls, and it's in actions like paying attention to the whole political process, and it's in actions like educating yourself. So no, I mean, you gave me all those thoughts, and I just wanted to put that out there. Again, it's motivation to get people out and vote for this Biden-Harris ticket.
All right, so I want to jump in right there and make sure that we get this question out, because this is something I just find incredibly interesting. There's something very dynamic about all of you, this brotherhood of young Black leaders of cities across the country. And I just want you to for a minute, talk about the brotherhood, talk about how it impacts you, how it helps you, and to kind of let us in on what people may or may not know about how this unit has come together. I've seen a lot of you work during my time in municipal government. I've come across you, Chokwe, in Mississippi, and Melvin Carter has been instrumental in training me and so many others to do politics just in and of itself. So speak to us a little bit about the brotherhood and how it's been helpful to you as you've gone on to do these incredibly difficult jobs that you do, leading these big cities across the country.
Look, I'll jump in right there and tell you that, I'm really proud of the stuff we've done in St. Paul over the last few years. And it just doesn't happen without this group of brothers, man. The brothers who were on earlier and dropped off, and the sisters. We have some amazing Black women mayors who are just incredible, who provide some incredible leadership. I follow them on Twitter. When they do something amazing, I do it 30 minutes later. And kind of send it to my team. We're constantly texting each other and tweeting at each other and calling each other and say, how'd you do this or when'd you do that? We exchange policy. We pray for one another.
Hey, Mel, hold on.
3 in the morning. Yes, sir.
But we also call, Mayor Lumumba fake Drake. He.
See, I wasn't even going to go there. I mean, Drake tries to make himself look like Mayor Lumumba. We all know that. But this is a team, man. This is a team, and it's a blessing to be able to do this work alongside these just amazingly brilliant brothers and sisters around the country who are doing it as well.
No, I'm going to be brief because I'm going to have to get off here shortly. But at the end of the day, it's nothing better when we're going through the amount of challenging times and stress that we can call on one another because, A, someone's already been through it or they're currently going through it at the same time. And so in times like this, it's nothing better to call on your brother or some of our Black sisters as well as we're moving forward in these challenging times. It truly is a brotherhood, but also it's also great to just kind of joke around as we often do because we all need a bit of levity.
Yeah, we all, this is a sincere friendship that you see here. We all have similar experiences that we're facing, and as friends, not only do we need sometimes professional support, but we need a moment of relief, and so like in the middle of this call, I'm about to call it out. In the middle of this Zoom, Melvin sends me a meme about me saying that we are not monolithic. That's how petty he is.
We are not a monolith.
But we help support each other. In fact, I had to see my chiropractor the other day for carrying Melvin through this process.
Look, I think that Trey, in this collective that we have, and there are others who are not able to join us today that are part of it, and certainly there are those that came before us that blaze trails as well. We're in a position, I think, right now because of what we're dealing with in our communities, what's going on nationally, to really use one another as sounding boards, to really try to duplicate, some things and maybe tweak some things that we may see working in other communities. And I think it's good to be able to call up, another mayor, any of these brothers to talk to them, offline or online about, hey, how did you all do this? What were your steps in bringing about, better police community interactions? What are you doing to address fines in municipal courts? What are you doing legislative level? Why are you looking at some of these policies and how those things working? It's good to be able to have that friendship to call and just kind of get an idea, or just kind of someone say, hey, you know what? I tried this, or I did it a couple of years ago, and here's what you may want to look out for. You kind of factor that in. And so I think having a collective like this makes us all better. I think it helps our communities, and I think it helps us as leaders to be better. And certainly, as has been pointed out, we're going to make sure that everybody stays humble, whether it's frat related, whether it's your undergrad, whatever it may be.
The office you in?
That's over. or what office you in, because you can't wear small shirts with big biceps, like mayors of Shreveport do. You gotta button it up a little bit. So we're going.
And Mayor Reed.
Yeah.
Mayor Reed, you can't just say like what universities you went to or what fraternities you're in or things like that, just generically, because we know those aren't like generic things. We know those are very specific things. So we got to move on. Frank Scott, what is your opinion on those things?
I think that's our little brother over there, right? Isn't that right? Yeah.
I like to tell Black Phi that, listen, it was good, but as being the first started on the HBCU campus. and being one who's an HBCU grad, I don't have to wear my letters across my chest. You know where I went. You know what I call, and that's the house.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. You can pledge Alpha, but you're born a Kappa. You know.
Can you say that in rhyme, Marilyn? Can you say that in rhyme?
He can't. Oh man.
I want to add, you know, this is essentially what you're saying. I mean, this is essentially our barbershop that we have, whether it's through a text thread, whether we get on the phone, whether we're meeting at a conference. This is our barbershop. And my barbershop here in Shreveport, I call it the Black Man's Golf Course. But either way, what you're seeing is a space for us to come together and be the brotherhood that you've seen, and for us to really be open to have conversations on how we can be better and more effective at our job, or have conversations about the NBA finals, and have conversations and speak freely. We're in positions within our cities where we don't often get to have those conversations so openly and so freely. So this is our version of the shop, the barbershop, and we have benefited in a million different ways because of it. I know for a fact that I wouldn't be as strong of a leader as I am without these gentlemen. And their constant advice to me, their constant presence, just being there when I needed a sounding board. And, you know, it just makes us stronger overall as leaders, and it makes our community stronger at the end of the day. So I'm super grateful. Wouldn't want to serve alongside anybody else, even though they got jokes about tight shirts and everything else. I still love these fellas, and you know, grateful for everything they do for me and everybody else.
Hey, Mayor Perry, because we appreciate you. You almost sounded like an alpha man, so that's pretty cool.
I just want to add one more point to this because it's important to me. First and foremost, I think one reason that we all get along so well is because it's a safe space, right? Yeah. We feel that we can come to each other in confidence about challenges that we have. And, you know, just in my life, I try to surround myself with people that make me better, people that challenge me. And I can say that every person that has been on this call is someone that I have, you know, borrowed an idea from, someone that I have spoken to through challenge, that, you know, I tried my best to support, you know, if they had a challenge. And so there's some sincere respect and love for one another in that regard. And I'm happy. I don't know if this experience would have been the same if my city and my constituents could have benefited in the same way without this sounding board that we have. And so I do genuinely appreciate each and every person that's on this call.
So before we get out of here, I want to get one more question in to you. And so in 30 seconds or less, and we'll just go around the horn to everybody, let us know what in a Biden-Harris administration will be most helpful to you in your cities, whether that's access to resources, whether that's access to government programs. What's that one thing that the Biden-Harris administration can be doing on day one that'll be most helpful to your cities?
I'll jump in this one first. I think the one thing is just a functional government. And what I mean by functional government, there's a whole bunch of subtext to that. Protecting Social Security, protecting our healthcare, and making sure that the Affordable Care Act survives, making sure that people are getting unemployment benefits and all the resources that they need to get through COVID-19, our small businesses, you name it. But we need a functional government. Our communities thrive when, again, our entire system is working from the local level all the way up to the federal level. And we need them to just make sure that government works again and operates with some decency that we can all believe in.
I think a vibrant and inclusive economy.
Absolutely. I agree with both of those things. And I would say just a recognition that the local level is where the rubber meets the road. It is truly where the efficacy of any policy in Washington is realized. And so, you know, I want to thank Vice President Biden that as several of my brothers that are on this call, as we, you know, put out things that were important to us in our communities, that he agreed to meet with us, to sit down with us. There are various people on this call that have been on this call that throughout the campaigning process have had an opportunity to either sit down with him as a group or speak to either him or his team individually. And so going past this moment of November 3rd, that has to remain so. Some of us are in deep red states. We are blue spots within deep red states. And often the resources don't make it all the way to us. And so we have to eliminate the roadblocks. When we have entitlement funds that don't come to cities like Jackson, when they create central planning districts or metro planning districts in order to usurp the resources that are intended for our communities, that is an effort by the state to rob resources from our community. And so I have spoken to Vice President Biden about this. And so we hope that we can diligently work alongside him to eliminate those type of hurdles.
I think from my standpoint, the thing we have to do is certainly uphold the Affordable Care Act. We have to continue to try to restore the Voting Rights Act. And from the other point that I think is so important for me, and Mayor Lumumba just touched on this, it is to make sure that cities have a voice. We know that overwhelmingly people of color, in particular African Americans, live in cities, and it's important that cities be able to get the resources and the partnership and the collaboration they need from the federal government. Our state legislatures and whatnot withstanding, we have to make sure that we can get the access to the federal government programs that we need in order to continue to expand our economic footprint and make sure that we can provide for our residents that we represent.
Yeah, without a doubt. I know 30 seconds is difficult for a lot of the brothers here on this call. Mayor Lumumba, I'm looking at you. So I'll say real quickly, housing. To me, establishing deep investments in housing is something that's really important for us to do. We need housing. We need people to be able to be stably housed. That will make a profound impact on our community and our country.
Well, thank you, Mayor Carter. Thanks to all of you. This has just been a great conversation. And I appreciate y'all coming and talking straight to us about, what we're seeing in the communities, what we can be doing for Black men in particular, and then just talking about your stories as Black men. It's incredibly instructive to what we're doing. And we'd just like to thank you for your friendship and your support of Vice President Biden and Senator Harris over the course of this campaign. So in conclusion, we're going to keep having these conversations. We've got a great Shop Talk conversation coming up this weekend in Michigan. And then in the coming weeks, we'll be having HBCU week, including a Shop Talk in Georgia and in Florida. And so we're going to keep this conversation going. We're going to continue to talk to Black men. Our Sister to Sister program will continue to talk to Black women. And of course, we're doing Make It Happen Monday, every Monday, where we talk to Black-owned businesses from across the country and talk about solutions to how we come back after COVID-19. So in addition to attending our programs, here's what I need you to do. Just a couple of things. One, I need you to get into our program. And the easiest way to do that is by texting AFAM. That's AFAM, AFAM to 30330. Again, that's AFAM to 30330. That'll put you on our listserv, and you'll get all the email updates, all the talking points, and everything that you're going to need to do to get involved. The other thing that I need you to do is go to iwillvote.com. That's iwillvote.com. There you can register for states that is still able to register, and then you can also find out about your voting precincts and get questions answered about your voting status and make sure everything is everything so that you can go out and so that you can vote. And finally, we need you to go out and vote. We need you to go to the polls, vote early in states across the country. In some of the states that these mayors represent, voting is happening right now. We're seeing that the polls opened in Georgia and the polls opened in Texas, and there are long lines for early vote. Early voting has gone up in North Carolina and in Virginia, and people are out voting. People are enthused and want to make change in this country. So doing those three things, I think is key to us making sure that we can restore the soul of the nation. And on November 3rd, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take that first step to making this country a better place for everyone, but especially for Black communities and Black men and everyone in this country who's hurting right now. So thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. Again, thank you to all of you mayors for being a part of this program. You were fantastic, and this was a fantastic conversation. So we appreciate you. Also, don't want to get out of here without thanking our media partners for being a part of this. And everyone, have a good night, and we'll see you at the polls.
There's been so many things that's held us down, but now it looks like things are finally coming around. I know we've got a long, long way to go, and where we'll end up, I don't know. But we won't let nothing hold us back. We're putting our show together, we're polishing up our